दर्शकवृन्द नमस्कार। कार्यक्रम रूपान्तरणमा तपाईलाई स्वागत छ। आजको रूपान्तरण कार्यक्रममा हामी 18 डिसेम्बरमा मनाउन गइरहेको विश्व आप्रवासी दिवसको सन्दर्भमा कुराकानी गर्दैछौँ र यो कुराकानीका लागि आज हामीले अतिथिको रूपमा अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय आप्रवासी संगठनका मिसन प्रमुखलाई स्टुडियोमा निम्ति आएका छौँ र नेपालमा आप्रवासीहरूका सवालहरू के हुन्, चुनौतीहरू के छन् र खास गरी अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय आप्रवासी संगठनले कसरी काम गरिरहेको छ त नेपालमा भन्ने सवालमा आजको कुराकानीलाई केन्द्रित राख्छौँ। लागौँ कुराकानीतर्फ। Maurizio, I am pleased to welcome you in our program Rupantaran.
Namaskar.
Let's begin with the general information about IOM office in Nepal. What is the mandate of IOM to work in the migration issue in Nepal?
International Organization for Migration is an intergovernmental body based in Geneva with a membership of 155 countries, so almost universal. Nepal is a member of International Organization for Migration since 2007, and since then we have been operating continuously in out of Nepal, Kathmandu, in a number of programs and projects looking at the various aspects of migration management and migration governance, assisting migrants and their family, and supporting in terms of capacity and technical expertise the Nepali institutions and also the stakeholders that work on these complex issues of migration.
Is IOM working based on project or based on program in Nepal to address this migration issue?
We have a multi-annual program framework, but the nature of our work is mainly based on projects. We decide and agree and then conclude multi-annual program with the endorsement of our host government, and then we go out to fund these activities in the form of projects that are then supposed to attract fundings from the international communities, and to a certain extent are also funded by the International Organization for Migration.
What are the major activities that are run under IOM in Nepal?
I would divide them in four main blocks of activity. The main one is probably the prime one is on migration governance, if I can actually encapsulate it in this definition. Means supporting the sustainable and viable management of migration. So in a way that it can benefit the migrants, the country of origin and also the country of destination. Another area of our work is on disaster response and preparedness. You know that Nepal is a high prevalence of natural disasters, so we work on those issues related to mobility of people triggered by emergencies, including floodings, landslides, and also earthquakes. So we work with Ministry of Home Affairs in Nepal to prepare the condition for a proper planning and response to a natural disaster and the ensuing mobility. The third area of work is on providing services to migrants themselves, supporting the migrants through the immigration experience. We do that in various ways, assisting returning migrants to Nepal, migrants in need, especially those who are stranded in difficult situations in the destination countries, but also providing services such as medical assessment for those nationals who are actually willing to and are planning to go abroad and are applying for visas for a number of countries. Finally, we have a large program, we call it humanitarian resettlement program. We assist the government of Nepal and the receiving countries, including the US, Canada, and Australia and other countries, to face and take care of this issue of that Nepal has been confronted for the last 20 years of Bhutanese refugees based in Japa in the south of the country that are gradually being resettled to final destination countries, the one that I just mentioned.
Yeah, you are working with these different activities and with the different project by focusing the Nepali migrant and to some extent Bhutanese refugee as well. I would like to again draw your attention regarding the overall situation of Nepali migrant. How do you view, what is your observation regarding the Nepali migrants' overall situation?
Right, Nepal is one country that has experienced the phenomenon of migration relatively later than other neighbors, India for instance. But this phenomenon is becoming ever increasingly relevant, and the numbers speak by themselves, and a prevalence of over 3+ million. I'm using some caution because, as you know, talking of migration and data is fundamental in our work, but unfortunately statistics on the movement of people across borders are not always completed and comprehensive. So, but this country has been experiencing all the main trends and patterns of mobility in the last 2 decades, driven by a number of factors, including the instability and the social level of development or lack of it, and the mobility from rural to urban areas, and then various types of mobility and immigration abroad, in the region, within the neighboring countries. As our viewer know well, the border with India is an open border, so mobility is extremely facilitated by that, with pros and cons. But also further afield to the South and Southeast Asian region, and also in other regions, to other regions of the world, the Saudi Peninsula, for instance, but also other regions of Asia and Europe and the Americas. So it's a phenomenon that is multifaceted, that is confronting and challenging the society and the institution of Nepal in many way, and is in a way changing the fabric and the textile of the Nepali society. So that's why it's important that this phenomenon and this I would say epochal change, and that is properly given the priority and the attention in terms of both policy decisions and also resources that it deserves.
As you mentioned, there are lots of issues regarding the migration and mobility as well. You just told that there is internal mobility is also one of the emerging issue, and another issue is international mobility. Millions of youth are migrating into abroad, and millions or thousands of Nepali citizens are getting mobilized or making their mobility from rural to urban, exactly. Semi-urban to urban. Yes. Which issues is your priority area? Internal mobility or international migration, or both?
Normally, the International Organization for Migration deals mainly with international migration, so across national boundaries. But it's very hard in any country of the world, and let alone in Nepal, looking at one dimension without looking the other one. Because very often for many migrants, the first step is actually an internal step, moving from rural areas to the capital or to the main city. Then the project, the migratory project actually unfolds, develops, and becomes more complex with the decision of actually moving abroad. So these two complex dimensions of migration need to be seen really alongside, are interwoven. But for our nature and also for our institutional mandate, IOM look primarily to the international migration dimension, and in which way it impacts in societies and in state, both individually and in relation among them.
What are the working areas for internal migrant or internal mobility issues?
Normally, the trigger for migration is always decision of generally we call a pull or a push factor. Push factor is often, I'm afraid, poverty and the lack of employment in particular. So rural areas are experiencing in Nepal this trend, again related to a number of events and factors, the civil unrest, but also climatic changes, access to land and other resources. So this all conjure actually to create this push factor that actually making a large number of people moving and reaching out to the urban center. On the other hand, there are also a number of pull factors. The fact that the urban centers are becoming I would say, a pole or a platform for accessing the very employment that is actually lacking in the rural areas, but also services like education, health, and other facilities, including goods that are not easily available in the rural areas. So this push and pull factor equation, let's say, is the same that also play and intervene when we are looking the international migration. We look at, as you certainly heard about, development gaps, differentials. So generally in nature things tend to equilibrium, and so is actually migration. When the demand of basically good and services is not met in certain areas and region, human beings actually move to fulfill and to meet and to address their needs. And this is basically the basic engine, the basic motor behind the mobility of people. It's always been like that in history, but this has been accelerated hugely in the last 2 generations by a number of factors, obviously facilitated mobility, connectivity, communication, but most importantly when we look at the human psychology, also expectation and imaginary of migration plays a huge role in the decision of people moving, especially the youngster.
What are the challenging issues of migration in Nepal?
One of the other main challenge, I would say, is certainly what we all know as the brain drain. What brain drain means, obviously, for people going abroad very losing the skills and expertise, the human capital, dilapidating it. And this is not only a loss for the individual, but also is a net loss for the country. If we only think about how much a graduate costs to an administration, a doctor, a nurse, an engineer, losing this talent and this expertise to other countries is a constant bleeding for a country that need to be tamed, addressed and confronted. But also the other challenges, there are many. If we look out the societal texture of the Nepalese society and culture has been modifying itself in the last 20 years because of migration. More migrants have brought about more changes, but not necessarily all changes are positive. We all have seen, have noticed that the family separation, the falling apart of cultural setting that have been going on for centuries and centuries, the vulnerability of a number of, especially some group of people. I'm thinking of the youngster, the minors, the unaccompanied, and especially the women that often find themselves in a situation of exploitation, bordering the most gruesome violation of their rights. So migration, as other phenomena, have lights and shadows. We are there to try to harness and make the best of the benefits and try to minimize and mitigate and minimize the number of gaps and constraints that auto migration bring forward.
In your opinion, how can a country like Nepal be benefited with the large number of migrant peoples?
Nepal should and could, I think, benefit from development. Would be looking at its different dimensions: the local one, the national one, and the transnational one. We need to make sure that such a complex and multifaceted phenomenon that look at the society, the culture, the education, the health, the security aspects are broached and embraced and I would say governed and managed in an integrated and complex and comprehensive way. We need to make sure that, much as important, the labor land is indeed migrants go abroad seeking employment. So the employment dimension is fundamental, but it's not the only one. The employment dimension needs to be conjugated and brought together and brought to fore with other important migration, planning migration along the whole migration cycle, from when a person decides of migrating to when the same person decides to come back, maybe a generation later, maybe 20, 30 years later. So we need to look at the complexity of migration all around the cycle of migration.
Yeah. In this context, how IOM is working, it means what is your working modality here in Nepal?
We are here to strengthen and capacitate local resources, both at institutional level. We work with a number of ministries in the administration, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Local Development, Ministry of Peace and Reconstruction, Ministry of Industry, but also at civil society level. What is important is bringing new constituency to into the migration debate. Nepal has a wealth and should be proud of it, of instances, associations, individuals that are trying to really to make a change, to transform the society, to have an impact. But unfortunately, they are still working in isolation. This fragmentation has to be reconciled, has to be brought together. And I think IOM can play its modest role in assisting by how, for instance, bringing forward what could be some practices that once adapted could be also transposed in Nepal, helping Nepal to reach out to its diaspora. This is a concept that is not new to Nepal. And so that these people, this million of nationals that are abroad and their family don't feel disenfranchised and lost to their country, but they can play a valid and valuable and continuous role before and after their return. And also make sure that Nepal dialogue with other countries, with other institutions, with other governments, so that migration can become a win-win situation. Not like now that the risk if we don't do that enough, we are really giving away the silver, if you see what I mean. It's really making a generation, a full generation, not harnessing the potential of the youth, 400,000 that every year actually lean towards in the job market. We are not really doing a favor and bringing these young people actually to the role they have to play.
हातमा उपहार साथमा हिमाल हिमालको ग्राहक बन्नुहोस् साथमा पाउनुहोस् बालबालिकाको लागि उपयोगी मिदास इक्लास एलईडी ट्युबलाइट र बल्ब सोलर बत्ती बीएफडीआर हिलको गिफ्ट भाउचर र ग्रीन सिटी हस्पिटलको निशुल्क स्वास्थ्य परीक्षण सेवा र हरेक महिना एकजनालाई टी-शर्टको नाडी घडी उपहार। यो योजना काठमाडौँ उपत्यकाका लागि सीमित अवधिको लागि मात्र।
माल खबर पत्रिका हरेक आइतबार।
How do you view the policy related to migration in Nepal, means national policy and institutional capacity to address these emerging issues?
I must say I've seen a lot of progresses, and in my view I think time is ripe for Nepal to equip itself with the right resources and also tools to be able to capture this complexity. Not from the creation of yet another Ministry of Migration, but a super institution or simply an instance where all these complex issues related to education, health, security, labor, finance, economy, rural development can be actually be seen alongside and not in separation anymore. This, I think, is the challenge of tomorrow. It's something that we are working on with our partner and the national stakeholders.
It is said that migration has a close relationship with human development. In Nepal, millions of youth are migrating in different countries. And in this context, the upcoming International Migration Day's slogan is "Migrants' well-being is development." How human development or overall development is relevant or linked to the migration issue?
I like you brought up the concept of human development because it's an integral concept that tie together a number of economic development, societal development, cultural development, community development. So it's a concept that is an integrated one. And if you look at migration contributes to each and every of these different development. If a person leaves, he or she goes out to make a better living, to make an income. But while she's abroad, she's learning new skills, so she's enriching herself. But not only herself, also the persons, those close to her. When she decides to come back, she's not bringing only a suitcase, but a wealth of models, value, that culture that are have the possibility of changing and transforming the society of origin. And ultimately, the multiplier that a single person and those around there will have a generator to create and accelerate human development is huge. It's difficult to quantify. This is, I think, the challenge and the big opportunity that Nepal is facing. Missing this opportunity would really be an epochal failure. So we are there to make sure that migration alone is not possible, but migration in conjunction with another number of factors, including obviously good governance, transparencies, the role of the media, international dialogue. As only recently in October, the United Nations Assembly has been in its high-level dialogue, has been discussing how migration can contribute to the post-2015 development agenda after the Millennium Development Goal will be accomplished. So this is the new frontier, and this is actually the effort that we have to collectively be doing to move human development, and also Nepal to reach this important goal of breaking from least development countries by 2025.
Talking about the global context of migration issues, there is a critical view as well. Especially developing countries has a complaint or they have dissatisfaction regarding the migration issue, that developed countries are taking benefit from the migrant of developing countries. Yes, and that situation is creating the development gaps. So that issue should be properly addressed, and to address that issue, developed countries should help the developing countries. How do you view this?
I think that this claim, I think this claim is grounded, is well founded. In fact, despite anecdotal knowledge and commonplaces and stereotypes, developed country benefits enormously. If we only think of the contribution in a period of a financial economic crisis, the contribution in certain regions like Europe, or the creation of enterprises made by immigrants, is much higher than the one made by locals. They contribute not only their skills, but they contribute tax, they create income, they generate further employment. So this contribution is huge and is not properly reflected. So this legend has to be exploded. And again, we need to put across positive messages, but the claim would not be fully justified if the countries of origin wouldn't do their part of the work. The country of origin have the responsibility to make sure. It's very much like a market, obviously. Us, we are here to create added value. A migrant is valued in the international market if he or she can develop his full potential. If we send an engineer to work as a janitor, where is the gain? That's the brain down the drain that I was telling you before. So we must make sure that we target our immigration policies here in Nepal to make sure to fill that gap in the global employment market that would enable our human resources to fare the best. But then we must also make sure through international covenants, the convention are therefore there, but also bilateral and multilateral mechanism that brain down the drain doesn't happen anymore. I'll make you an example. Recognition and equivalence of qualification and degree is important that a doctor and nurse that come from a university in a developing country can work as a doctor or a nurse in the developed world. So it's once again about dialogue. But it's true, if the current state of affairs continues on, the developing world is losing an opportunity, and the gap is actually widening instead of actually narrowing down.
Right. And December 18 is the International Migration Day.
Indeed.
Yes, it is near to this date, yeah? And how are you going to mark that International Migration Day? It means December 18.
Migrants bring all that wealth of skills, expertise, value, hope, and despair, energy, dreams that we are not being able to mobilize. We want to mark this event in a very simple but fitting way, together with our partners, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Labour, the UN, the European Union. We would like, first of all, to present the results of a very nice photographic contest that we have been running for the last 2 months. We had fantastic shots, pictures from all over the world that depict and picture situation of migration that are beyond stereotype. We look at people happy to come back. We look at children designing, drawing up their dream, but also scenes of separation and suffering. So the wealth and the rich picture of migration. We would like to present it, the results, and also award the Grand Prix at the Patan Museum on the very 18th of December, and I hope that we will have a large crowd of people attending this ceremony.
Okay, last but not the least, what would be your message regarding that International Migration Day on behalf of your respective organization?
Think, move, and change. 3 words that I would like really we all reflect: move and change. Because migration has to be taught ahead.
Yeah.
Migration is not only mobility, but can move mountains.
Yeah.
So, and migration is a major vector of change and transformation. I'm really happy to be at transformation today, to be able really to resonate these messages that migrants can really transform the society for the better, but they cannot do that work alone. And I hope we will be able to go part of the way all together.
Thank you, sir, very much for your time and this very important information.
धन्यवाद।
हस् त दर्शकवृन्द, यही कुराकानीका साथ आजको रूपान्तरण कार्यक्रम यही सकिन्छ। अर्को हप्ता फेरि यस्तै विषयवस्तुमा गरिने कुराकानीका साथ तपाईँ हाम्रो भेटघाट हुन्छ। आजलाई बिदा दिनुहोस्। नमस्कार।